Whether it be positive or negative, looking through your videos, it's definitely clear that a pessimist or an optimist can play a role in the outcome of certain situations, past and present. Can you give us an example of how this works in science as well as the everyday world?
Sure. The key idea is that intent modifies future probability. Now, that's just, 4 words. Intent modifies future probability. Your listeners may not know what I mean by future probability. This description requires a little more background, and you have to understand how the nature of reality works, that indeed this is a statistical and probabilistic reality. There is a future probability that is calculated. That future probability does not have to happen. It can change. We have free will. We can make the choices that we wish. But there's a certain probability that things will happen based on past information. And we can change that probability with our intent. Now, that's a very, very short description. For others that would like to get more into this, go to the YouTube site and look at the Calgary Saturday, and it will describe all of this in detail. Secondly, you have to understand that objectivity is just an approximation. Okay, we do not live in an objective world. We live in a probabilistic statistical world. I should say reality rather than world. Objectivity is an approximation in the, under the condition. The approximation is a good approximation under the conditions that natural uncertainty is small. Okay, and you'll see this follows the same flow of events that we've seen from the very beginning. We start with an understanding. Let's say that the world is flat, or that the Earth is the center of the universe. We start with that understanding, and what happens is then we learn more. We have a bigger picture. We see that, well, indeed, the Earth isn't flat. It's round. But we don't throw away the concept of a flat Earth. The flat Earth is a good approximation for short distances. Surveyors today, unless they're global surveyors laying out houses and buildings and things, use a flat Earth model, because over small distances, flat Earth is a perfectly good approximation. And then, of course, we had Newtonian mechanics. And Newtonian mechanics was thought to be the final word, and then along came quantum mechanics. And we didn't throw out Newtonian mechanics. Newtonian mechanics becomes an approximation. It's perfectly good where objects aren't moving at very high rates of speed, and where they're in the macro world, or not in the tiny world. So we keep that as an approximation. We just have to know the boundaries within which it fits, and then we can use it as an approximation. Well, going to a bigger picture past quantum mechanics and relativity, we see that reality is probabilistic. It's not objective. But we don't throw out the objective concept of reality being objective. We realize now it's just an approximation. Those places where uncertainty is small, then the reality appears to be approximately objective. Now, what sort of things are, what am I talking about when I say that the natural uncertainty is small? Well, look at physics. Look at the hard sciences. The hard sciences deal with things that have small inherent uncertainties. In other words, the size of a brick. How does a ball or a cannonball go on a hyperbolic? On a parabolic trajectory? How does that work? Well, hard science can calculate that, to 9 or 10 decimal places. There's very little uncertainty there. All the hard sciences deal with things that have natural small uncertainty. What about the soft sciences? What's the difference between a hard science and soft science? Now, soft sciences are things like economics, psychology, sociology, anthropology. These are soft sciences. There's lots of uncertainty in these sciences. Psychology, is the study of people and how they interact and act, what motivates them. And there's lots of uncertainty there. So what do they have to do? They can't do the same kind of science that hard science does. They have to do blind experiments, double blind, triple blind. Why? Because that double and triple blind removes some of the uncertainty. It removes some of the variables, which is intent modifying probability, so that if the scientist knows what the experiment's supposed to do and they want it to come out a certain way, they believe that it will come out a certain way for their reasons, that actually affects the outcome, you see, and it comes out the way they thought because they are modifying future probability with their intent. So they realized that they couldn't get repeatable results until they went to the double-blind experiment that eliminates that variable of intent modifying future probability. You see, that's the same in medicine with the placebo effect. They found out that the doctor's attitude, what the doctor said to the patient, had a lot of influence on how well the patient healed, how well he got over his problem. It was intent modifying future probability, not only the doctor's intent, but the patient's intent. If the patient thought that he was just given something that would make him well, he tended to get well. And it's not just that he thought he'd get well, but he actually does get well. That's what's called the placebo effect. So in the soft sciences, we realize that there's lots of uncertainty, and we have to remove some of it in order to actually do experiments that mean something. So that's so it affects our everyday world. You can change what happens, what's likely to happen, with your focused intent. That's kind of the basic thing. So how does healing take place? When a mental healer, does his work, what he's doing is modifying future probability. Okay? It's the same thing. Placebo effect is modifying future probability with the beliefs and the intent of both the patient and the doctor, and so on. So once you realize that, then that opens up a whole door for affecting your life and your situation. You just say, is it positive or negative, a pessimist or an optimist? Well, an optimist has a very positive attitude toward things, therefore he tends to modify his future probability in a positive way. A pessimist with a negative attitude toward life and events and possibilities tends to modify future probability in a negative way. We've known that for ages. The first one that I know that wrote a book about it was Norman Vincent Peale. I think it was like the middle 1950s. Wrote a book called The Power of Positive. What was it? The Power of Positive Suggestion. Not quite right, but anyway, something like that. He realized that there was power. There was real power in attitude. And we have today we have things like The Secret going around that says you can program the universe to give you what you want. Well, that's a very simplistic view of what's going on. It's not the universe. You're not programming, but you can modify future probability with intent.